Ghost Stories One Night Story by Kidou Okamoto. An old woman named Ofuku speaks. If you ask an old woman like me to tell you something, I don't have any unusual stories to share with the ears of young people these days. But over the years, there have been some things that only I can find strange. This is one of them. I was 17 years old, the second year of Bunkyu. At the time, my family ran a small liquor store in Sendajizuka-shicho, Hongo, at the foot of Dangazaka, famous for its well-known chrysanthemum dolls. It seems that the name Dangazaka remains because there used to be a tea shop on that slope that roasted and sold dumplings. Unlike today, the areas around Nizu and Komagome were quite desolate at that time. In Sakashitacho, where we lived, there was the large mansion of Lord Ogasawara, a temple called Myarenji, and 7 or 8 houses of Hatamoto samurai commanders. The rest were town houses, but near Dangazaka there were also nurseries and farmers' fields, so it was even more desolate than the suburbs of today. In front of the temple called Myarenji lived a samurai and wanderer called Osei Soman. Apparently he had been in the domains of Shirakawa and Nihonmatsu in Oshu, but had become a wanderer for some reason and had come to Edo 7 or 8 years ago. The father and son rented a shop here together. Soman was around 44 or 45 years old at the time and was single as his wife had died the previous year. His only son, Yoichiro, was about 20 years old, pale and quiet. As a ronin, he didn't have any particular business, but he gathered children from the neighborhood and taught them how to read and write, acting as a sort of writing teacher. Of course, it seems that he couldn't make a living from that alone, but he seemed to have some savings, and he lived safely for 7 or 8 years. The father never failed to drink about a cup of nightcap every night. When this father and son first moved here, I was still a child, so I don't know the details, but the neighbors apparently had this rumor going around. Those people will be scared and move out soon. There was a reason for this, as it was said that the people living in the house were cursed, and apparently about 10 people changed in the space of 5 or 6 years. Some people moved out within a month. I don't know exactly what kind of curse there is, but I do know that 3 funerals were held in that house over a 5 or 6-year period. The Ase family knew this when they rented the house, so the rent must have been cheap. People were charmed by the cheap rent and secretly whispered that even a samurai would be shocked if they lived in such a haunted house. "There's no way there are curses in this world," said a man named Soman, laughing. However, he was a large man with black scars on his face and a strong-looking ronin, so he may not have feared curses at all. Seeing speaks volumes, and although there were rumors that something would happen any minute, Ase and his son continued to live here without a care. So the bad rumors naturally died out and the neighbors began to feel safe and even sent their own children here for training. My parents sometimes said that since they had been living here safely for 7 or 8 years, maybe Soman was right and there really were no curses in the world. So why did the previous residents move out so suddenly? Perhaps they had heard the rumors from the neighborhood and simply felt uneasy, scared by invisible shadows, and fled quickly. Perhaps the 3 funerals were just a coincidence. Of course, people today would think that way. People in the past probably thought the same way. At first Ase was just a calligraphy master, but later he began to teach swordsmanship as well. They didn't have a dojo or anything like that, but they would outdoor practice in the open space behind the building, and we would often go and see them. At that time, Edo was nearing the end, and the world was becoming increasingly turbulent. So even townspeople were able to wield bamboo swords and the like, and there were about 10 young people who became Ase's apprentices. Now, on to the main story. In the year Bunkyu 2, which I mentioned at the beginning, there was a heavy snowfall on New Year's Day, and then the wind continued to blow every day, causing fires all over the place. On New Year's Eve, a fire broke out in Koishikawa Sashigayacho, and it burned down as far as our neighborhood. That spring, major repairs were being made to the Ueno-Chudo Hall, so it wasn't like cherry blossom viewing was forbidden, but most people refrained from attending. In Mukajima, violent behavior among the samurai was common, and many people would wave their swords around while drunk. so women and children could not go out there carelessly. Furthermore, street murders were common, and there were many cases of burglary. In such a dangerous world, young people like us were completely absorbed in what was going on, and we were simply terrified by the fact that it was such an unpleasant world. However, such times were a blessing, and what would be called unemployed ronin today were employed in various places and even received stipends. Ase was one of them, and he was returning to the mansion of the former feudal lord where he had once been a ronin. Both father and son were overjoyed, and the neighbors also celebrated, saying they were happy. I would like to express my gratitude for all the years of support, and I would like to hold a small celebration for everyone. So please come, even if it is a little inconvenient. With these words, Ase invited the neighbors with whom he was usually close. As the house was not large, they decided to split the invitation over 2 days, inviting the local neighbors on the first night, and his swordsmanship students on the second. My father was invited on the first night, and both the host and the guests were satisfied. Everyone was happy and returned home in high spirits. Then, the following night, a strange incident occurred. It was a dark night in mid-May, with a light rain falling intermittently. One side was on high ground, and there were many forests nearby, so at this time of year, when the young leaves are lush, it is very dark even on moonlit nights, and it was especially so on a night like this. About 10 young men had gathered at Mr. Ase's house. After all, it was a household of 2 men, a father and a son, and there were no women to help, so it was difficult to serve at a time like this. So, 2 daughters from the neighborhood, Otoyo and Okaku, were asked to help out, and they were preparing food both last night and tonight. The food was ordered from a nearby caterer, but there were still 10 guests, so Otoyo and Okaku were quite busy, working both in the living room and in the kitchen. Since only young people had gathered, the night was even more lively, and as the sake started to flow, cheerful laughter could be heard even outside. Then Mr. Ase, the owner, started saying the following. Time flies, and it's been 8 years since I came here. People say that this house is cursed. I moved here knowing that, but nothing suspicious has happened since then. Neither I nor my son have suffered any serious illnesses or misfortunes. We have lived through the years safely, and now, unexpectedly, I have been granted the opportunity to return to my former master's mansion. I couldn't be more happy about this. I don't know who first said it, but it's a lie that this house is cursed. Far from being cursed, I would say that the god of fortune resides here. Mr. Ase was also at a happy occasion and had been drinking more than usual tonight, so he spoke with a loud laugh, as if proud that what he had said was correct. Everyone listening also laughed in unison, saying that it was just as he had said. If everything had gone smoothly, then all would have been as you wished, but the host and his guests continued to drink with amusement. And once again tonight, just as it was nearly 4:10 p.m., there was a light knock on the back door, and Okaku, who was serving in the living room, went out to the kitchen. Then there was a similar light knock on the back door, and this time her son, Yoichiro, came out. It was quiet both inside and outside, and not a sound was heard after that. When neither Okaku nor Yoichiro returned, the others became curious, and 2 or 3 of them got up and went out the front and back. But outside was pitch black, so you couldn't see a thing in front of you, and there was no sign of anyone around. Feeling even more puzzled, they lit a fire inside and went out, but there was still no sign of anyone. What's going on? Everyone looked at each other. First Okaku-san left through the back door, then Yoichiro-san went out the front door, and neither of them were able to find their whereabouts. It was no wonder that everyone was puzzled. Who on earth had knocked on the front and back doors? Where had the 2 gone? In this case, rather than questioning them, it would be a shortcut to find the whereabouts of the 2 of them. So 5 or 6 young men lit lanterns and ran out the front and back doors. They were young men who were planning to learn swordsmanship, so they all hurried out in the dark and light rain. They went out, but had no idea where they were. They split up and walked left and right, calling out to each other without any target in mind. Okaku-san. Okaku-san. Yoichiro-san. Surprised by the voices, the neighbors came out too. The people from my shop also went out and searched together, but they could not find their whereabouts, and everyone could only say how strange it was. They felt as if they were in a dream, as if they had been bewitched by a fox, and as if they did not understand why. Okaku was the only daughter of a plasterer in the town. Her father, Takechi was a very skilled craftsman, and they lived comfortably with 2 apprentices and 1 boy. Okaku was 16 this year and had come to Ase for calligraphy lessons, so she came to help out last night and tonight. Her mother, Otoki, was a sickly woman. Although it was strange, the first thing that came to everyone's mind was the relationship between Yuichiro and Okaku. If there was some kind of bond between the young couple and they were able to return to the mansion, the two would not be able to meet. If they were to be confined to the country, it would be the end of their ties for life. So the 2 of them got together and ran away. That's what we can think, but if that was the case, there must have been a more convenient opportunity than tonight. No matter how young they were not children, and if they had decided to run away, they would have made the proper preparations. Where could they have run off to on this rainy night without even a change of clothes? When you think about it like that, their running away doesn't seem logical at all. Still, it's hard to imagine that they would have committed suicide together. My first question is whether we should consider their running away separately or whether we should link them together. Another question is who knocked on the back door, who knocked on the front door, and whether it was the same person or someone else. When dawn came, the 2 had not returned, and the commotion only got worse. A light rain started falling intermittently again today, and it was a gloomy, gloomy day. Around noon that day, a young man at my store found out the following story. The head priest of Daisenji Temple in Misakicho was called back from a memorial service for a parishioner, and was passing through Sakashita-cho at exactly that time when he encountered a girl of about 10 or 11 years old walking towards him from the direction of Yanaka, wearing a long furisode kimono and getting soaked by the light rain that was falling at that time. As the night drew near, he turned around to see where the little girl was going, and he says that he lost sight of her near Ase-san's house. Of course, as I said before, it was a dark night, so he couldn't be sure whether the girl had disappeared or been hidden by the darkness. The head priest didn't think it was strange at all and just passed by, but when he heard about Ase-san's incident this morning, he suggested that perhaps the girl had knocked on the door. Hearing the young man's report, my father tilted his head in confusion. Priests tend to tell ghost stories like that. I don't know if it's true or not. However, it seems that it wasn't just the people at my store who heard it, and the rumor quickly spread to the neighborhood, and the rumor of an elopement turned into a kind of ghost story. There was a curse on that house after all. Nothing had happened up until then, but just as Ase-san was about to move out, the mysterious curse occurred. Aside from his son Yuichiro, how could a stranger like Okaku-san have been caught up in this? Why was Okaku-san cursed as well? Unable to accept this, my father remained stubborn. No matter how stubborn my father was, the fact that the two were missing was indisputable, and there was no choice but to decide that it was either an elopement or a ghost story. Considering the circumstances surrounding the incident, it was difficult to conclude that she had simply run away, and the ghost story also seemed suspicious, so everyone was unsure of what to do. When I asked Ase-san's father what he thought about it, he said he had no idea at first, but finally confessed the following. The girl who the Daisenji Nashoyang monk saw, about 10 or 11 years old, wearing a long kimono, actually, I have some idea about that. On the evening of the day I moved here, a girl who looked like her was peeking in from the back door. I thought she was probably a neighborhood child, but I haven't seen her around here since. I had forgotten about it after that, but this story reminded me. It seems that she was the mysterious girl that the Nasho met. This is definitely a ghost story. Okaku-san's father, Tokichi, had lost his only daughter, so he split up with the craftsman and went looking for her with crazy eyes, and when he came home the next day disappointed, he found the ghost story above. The poor father was even more disappointed, and his face turned pale. His sick mother had already gone to bed. When Otoyo, who worked with Okaku, heard the story, she also shivered and suddenly felt unwell, so she went to bed. On a rainy night, a girl wearing a long kimono came knocking on the door and lured a young man and a woman out. There were rumors that if you go near a place, you will be cursed, but it was decided that Ase had been cursed. He had always had a good reputation in the neighborhood, and this commotion occurred during the celebration of his return. So the people in the town felt even more sorry for him, but when it became a ghost story like this, there was nothing they could do about it. Perhaps Ase had thought that he was being treated badly by the neighbors because he had been spreading rumors up until now, so he left that night without informing anyone. The household goods were left as they were, and there was a note on the desk that read as follows: "Dear Sir, this time, an unexpected tragedy has occurred, causing a commotion in the town, and I have no excuse for it. I especially feel sorry for Lord Takichi. I would like to investigate further, but as the time for my return is approaching, I am extremely sorry that I cannot fulfill my wish. I have left my few belongings as they are, so I would appreciate your kind consideration. As soon as possible. Azai Soman." May 16th. To the town. Unlike today, at that time, this is the end of the story. However, the ghost stories do not die down easily, and people continue to spread rumors, such as someone saw a girl wearing a long-sleeved kimono last night, or someone knocked on a certain house's door. So we faint-hearted people like us cannot go outside after dark, and on rainy nights we feel small and frozen. He must have heard the rumors, because 4 or 5 days later, the boss of a police force came to the neighborhood with his henchmen. After getting detailed information from the townspeople, the police force clicked his tongue. "Damn, he's run away like a pig." As he listened more and more, he was shocked to learn that Ase was a former Ronin and robber. Everyone was stunned by this. Come to think of it, Ase was not a particularly good-looking man, but his son Yoichiro had a fair, gentle-looking face, and yet I was shocked twice to think that the father and son were committing slashing and robberies together. Appearances can be deceptive. Still, they seem to have been very skilled at getting around, and their evil deeds went unnoticed for a long time. Then, somehow they were tracked down, and recently they were beginning to feel unsafe. So the father and son apparently discussed it and concocted a ghost story. The story about them returning to their original mansion was of course a lie, as they would have thought that running away in the middle of the night would raise suspicions. But why would they concoct such a ghost story? According to the investigations by the police, it was probably a way to lure Okano-san out. It is not known whether Okaku and Yuichiro had a relationship, but if they did, there would have been many ways to lure them out. So it is likely that they were not involved and simply intended to kidnap Okaku or Otoyo as a bonus on the way out, and sell them to some in-hostel prostitute. The person who knocked on the back door was one of Osei's friends or henchmen, and likely gagged Okaku as she had left without any thought and carried her out. Otoyo was lucky to be spared. It is not known why Yuichiro also left, but it may have been too much for him to handle alone to take Okaku to a faraway place, so he may have gone to help. After all, if she had simply run away from home, investigations would have been noisy. So he probably staged this ghost story to mislead people. The head priest of Daisenji Temple said he had seen a suspicious girl that night. So this was also investigated by the temple and shrine authorities. Because Nasho said this, it was decided that it was a ghost story, but it was discovered that Nasho had simply seen it and had nothing to do with Osei's case, so he was sent home safely. Therefore, the true identity of the girl in Furisode is unknown. Osei probably hadn't even thought of the girl in Furisode in the first place, but taking advantage of the rumor spreading, he came up with an idea for the moment and made the bold proposal, actually, on the evening of the day of the move. People today wouldn't easily fall for such a trick, but it seems that people in the past were honest after all. The most unfortunate thing to suffer were Okaku's parents, as her mother remained asleep for about a year before eventually passing away. It is not known what happened to the Osei family after that. There were rumors that they were arrested in Oshu, but no one knew for sure. 3 or 4 years later, I heard a rumor that Okaku had been sold to a prostitute at a post station near Nikko, but this was only a rumor and I never found out what really happened. If this were a novel or a play, there would be many interesting scenes, such as the Osei father and son's detective work and what became of Okaku, but the true story starts off strong and ends badly, and it's a shame that the ending is unclear. I'm sorry to have bored you so much.